I've tested a lot of Tarkov settings recently: smooth motion, G-Sync, V-Sync, area light instancing, physical cores, process lasso, NVIDIA settings, BIOS, in-game graphics. And after testing all of these, I think I've found my complete Tarkov FPS setup. Now, this isn't going to be copy my settings and magically get 300 FPS. It's going to depend on your rig, but it's going to be great because I'm going to show you my full setup, what I actually use, what helped, what didn't really matter, and what I think most people should focus on if they want a better experience in Tarkov, no matter what setup you have. The setup I was using for testing today is a Ryzen 7 9800X3D, as well as a 5070 Ti, and 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM. I did also do some testing with a Ryzen 7 9700X with 32 gigs of RAM, just to get a perspective of a non-X3D CPU. For most FPS games, you want to go ahead and crank the settings all the way down, but Tarkov acts a little bit different, and we're actually going to need to balance out some of the settings to get the best performance that we can. Let's go ahead and start with the in-game settings. Starting with the game tab, there's only a few things you need to focus on here for performance. The main menu background is important. You want it to be on a static image, such as woods or factory. You don't want it on a dynamic one. FOV, we're going to have on max for the best performance. If you like the way it looks on lower FOV, you can run that. It will just affect the LOD, or the level of detail of things being popped in and popped out in the background. Use physical cores only, I found works best for most CPUs. Your results may vary. And the preload but hideout, again, personal preference if you want that to be loaded in when you start the game or the first time that you interact with the hideout. The graphics tab is where we're going to see our FPS gains, and starting with screen resolution, I'm on 1440p as that's what my monitor runs at. We are running borderless. I actually find you get better performance in borderless. You can test that yourself. I'm running multiple monitors, so it just helps to be in borderless. Texture quality mostly affects VRAM. It does have a little bit of a difference when it comes to performance and FPS. Generally though, if you have like 16 gigs of VRAM, you can run this on ultra and you won't really see a difference in performance. Moving to shadows, we want this on low just to get max performance. LOD quality, this I would recommend having at 2.5. It's very CPU intensive as it's changing the level of detail of things rendered far away as they pop into your field of view. Even with a 9800X3D around 2.5. Overall visibility, that is something that I have at 3000. If you have a lower end build, you could have it on 400 or 1000, but for me, it just really didn't affect FPS that much. If you guys want a full breakdown of what the exact settings you should run depending on what build you have, whether it's low end, mid tier, or high end, I actually did another video where I basically broke down the optimal settings for your build, so check that out if you're interested. Clouds we're gonna have on low just for performance. Anti-aliasing, we're actually gonna do TAA high. I see a lot of people using DLSS, and it generally gives you more performance to be on TAA high unless you're heavily GPU bottlenecked, and you can mess around with either using TAA, TAA high, FSR, or DLSS. Resampling, we want it on 1x because we just want our native resolution. HBAO, we can have on max performance with the 5070 Ti. If you're on something lower, you can turn that off. SSR, some people really like the way it looks, but it does affect performance, so I have that off. And anisotropic filtering really improves the way grass looks. I'm actually able to find enemies easier in grass, and like some of the ground textures just look a lot better. Area light instancing is actually the newest graphics setting in Escape from Tarkov, and basically this is going to offload some of the CPU calculations onto the GPU, and that's something that we really want in this game, so I have that enabled. Streets of Tarkov low res mode, that is going to depend on your GPU and how much VRAM you have. Basically just turn Streets of Tarkov down one of the texture quality modes, so it would bring high to like medium. These are my PostFX settings. I don't necessarily think these are the best that you can get, but it's the way that I like the game to look. And one thing I would keep in mind is mess around with the brightness as well as mess around with your monitor settings. You can change black boost, you can change your brightness and your gamma, and it can actually really improve visibility and just how the game looks in general. Now, the next biggest thing I would say for performance or just how the game is going to feel is going to be running smooth motion or frame gen or doing G-Sync and V-Sync. Now, I've been using smooth motion a lot lately. I've been streaming with it, testing it on and off, as well as messing with G-Sync and V-Sync. And currently I'm still using smooth motion. That's kind of what I'm sticking with for now. It's not gonna magically improve your real base FPS. It's gonna make the game feel smoother by generating extra frames, but your actual responsiveness still depends on your real FPS, frame time, and input latency. So if your base FPS is terrible, smooth motion is not going to fix everything. But if your base FPS is already decent and you can set it up properly, it can make Tarkov feel way smoother. I created this guideline for things like smooth motion, AMD fluid frames, and lossless scaling. That's stuff that you can kind of mess around with. And this is generally what I found to be best, is that if you're getting over 100 FPS, it's going to feel pretty good because you're going to have that raw performance to be able to push to like 200 FPS with smooth motion or lossless scaling. And the input latency is not going to be too bad. If you're between 80 and 100 FPS, it's going to feel a little floaty, but probably still usable if you don't mind it. And if you're getting less than 60 raw frames, it's going to feel pretty bad. It's going to feel really floaty and like your inputs aren't being actually registered with the game properly. If you decide not to use smooth motion for any reason, I do believe the next best setup you can have is using G-Sync, V-Sync, and a FPS cap. One thing you want to do is make sure that you do not have VSync enabled in the game, that you just have it enabled through either the AMD or NVIDIA control panel. Now, if you want a detailed breakdown on how these settings work or how to set them up properly, I have a few videos on it already, and I'll make sure to link those down in the description. NVIDIA app settings, these you don't want to mess with. This is actually just looking at your in-game settings, so you don't want to optimize it. What we want to look at is these settings here. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes on every single NVIDIA setting here because most people don't need that. If you want a detailed breakdown on NVIDIA control panel settings, you can probably find some YouTube videos on that. But for me, the big ones I care about are power management, low latency, VSync, G-Sync, and making sure my display is actually running at the correct refresh rate. For power management, we're going to put that on max performance, of course. For low latency, this is something you can test. If you're running smooth motion or G-Sync, V-Sync, FPS cap, you want this on ultra low latency. Some setups might feel better with it on, some don't. I don't think it's one setting that's going to make or break your performance. For V-Sync, like I said earlier, I prefer handling it in the NVIDIA control panel instead of in-game, especially if you're going to be using G-Sync with it. Obviously, we're going to make sure your monitor's set at the correct refresh rate in Windows. Sounds really basic, but a lot of people upgrade their monitors and never actually set it to the high refresh rate. So all you need to do is go into Windows settings, go to display, scroll down until you see advanced display, go ahead and click on that and hop into the choose a refresh rate and just make sure that you have your main monitor selected. While we're in the Windows settings, we can also enable game mode as well as enable the low latency while gaming. I have seen some contradictory stuff online saying that maybe there is issues with this, but I've had no issues with it, so I keep it on. Another really good idea is to make sure that your chipset drivers are up to date. They usually drop every few months, so it's something to take a look at. And same with your graphics drivers. Now, if you're having issues with like smooth motion or AMD fluid frames, you can try using DDU. It's a tool you can download online, and it basically like cleans and reinstalls your drivers. So if you're having issues with smooth motion or anything like that, you can try cleaning and reinstalling, or you can even download older drivers and see how those work for you. Now, Process Lasso, you don't necessarily need to use this. I use it to set CPU affinity as well as CPU priority for Tarkov. There is also like a performance mode, which like overrides the Windows performance to like maximize your CPU utilization. And it's just a cool tool. You don't necessarily need this for Tarkov. I basically just put physical cores only on through this, as well as the Pro balance enabled. MSI Afterburner is a really cool tool for overclocking your GPU. I also use it for RTSS, which is how I cap my FPS when I'm testing with that. And it's also how you can see the performance metrics in the top right corner with like the frame time and everything. But basically what you can do is you can download this, you can search up your graphics card and like a normal overclock for your graphics card, and you can try that. And then if it crashes, you can obviously dial that back. But maybe do a little research of your GPU and how far you feel comfortable pushing it if you want to overclock, and you can do that. I don't think it's going to help a lot for Tarkov just because this is a very CPU intensive game, but I thought I'd shout it out because it's something that I use every day. This is my actual setup, and I wanted to show you guys my BIOS. I know a lot of people don't really want to mess with their BIOS, so I'm just going to keep this simple. The main thing that you should look for is Expo or XMP is being enabled. Whether you're on AMD, it's going to be Expo, or DOCP if you're on DDR4, and XMP for Intel. Just going to make sure that your RAM is running at its highest speed. I'll go ahead and show my PBO settings here. I do have it manually set. You could just set this to auto and it would probably do pretty good on its own. But this is what I'm running for a 9800X3D. I watched a few guides and kind of just copy and pasted their settings and kind of tuned it to make sure that my build was stable. It did crash quite a few times when I was first starting this, so don't like try and set my settings and expect it to work perfectly. Make sure that rebar is enabled, and I want to make sure that above 4G decoding is enabled. So those are two things that you can look for in your BIOS. Every BIOS is going to be a little bit different, so you might have to kind of like sift through the settings. Or to do a recap of exactly what I'm running, you can actually see it on the screen here. I'm running smooth motion on. I have VSync off, no FPS cap, as well as physical cores only enabled. I find that works best for my setup. Your results may vary as well. I have the in-game settings that we showed earlier. I'm running on like ultra textures and everything like that. I have a very slight overclock on my 5070 Ti, and I do have the PBO enabled for my BIOS, for my CPU. If you have less RAM, especially 16 gigs of RAM, I would obviously, like, the best thing would be to upgrade your RAM, but at least restart your game every few raids. If you see that memory is leaking, you can try the memory trim setting in game. That's right beside enable physical cores only, or you could try using process Lasso to do smart memory trim through there. I mentioned it earlier when talking about smooth motion, but there is an app called lossless scaling, and if you're interested in like smooth motion but have an older GPU, you can give this a shot. Just start with the basics, like get your in-game settings right, make sure that your Windows settings are good and your drivers are clean and that your RAM is running at the right speed. Test smooth motion or lossless scaling if your setup supports it. Check your actual bottleneck with an overlay for your task manager or something like RTSS, what I'm running. Then once those are done, then you can start testing the little things like area light instancing or like physical cores only, or like doing the best optimization in process Lasso and FPS caps as well. You can cap towards your average FPS if you want it to feel a little bit more consistent. Want help with your own setup? Make sure to drop your CPU, GPU, RAM resolution per usual in the comments down below. But yeah, hopefully this helps. You're not wasting hours changing settings. Gave you guys some tools to work towards setting Tarkov up the best for you, right? Because it really depends on how you want the game to feel. Let me know if you're running smooth motion, if you run physical cores on or off, and what helped you the most. I've been doing live streams where people send me their PC specs and I try and help with settings. So make sure to sub if you want some more Tarkov performance tests, settings guides, and just overall setup help. And thank you guys for 1,000 subs. We're at a K, so I really appreciate you guys. More Tarkov FPS coming soon. Catch y'all later. Peace.